Ba, 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 ba. It's Tuesday, man. Oh. All right, we'll give folks a little time to get in here, let notifications do their thing, all that kind of nonsense. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Welcome to 2020 version 2.0. I hope y'all had a great New Year's Eve. Nobody got a little too wild and crazy. Just kind of chilled out. That was basically the summation of my New Year's Eve. Part of that is because that's also my lady's birthday, so it was pretty relaxed, but it was definitely up late. I played Mario Party until midnight, after midnight actually. We were in the middle of a Mario Party turn when the New Year struck, and it was just like, yeah, whatever. Not that important. Although my work is trying to blow my phone up, which is driving me crazy. Oh no, I see one of my employees in chat. Uh-oh. Oh man. So, we know how it is. Bentley talks about wild nonsense for a little bit before we get to topic. Because what I have to talk about is a little more chat interactive, I'm gonna give a few extra minutes for folks to get in here. So with that being said, has anyone watched the new Amazon Wheel of Time series? And if you read the books, you probably hate it. And if you're like me, a total illiterate heathen that doesn't read books really, you probably liked it if you watched it, or maybe you didn't. I don't know. But yeah, I'm curious for those who watched it if you liked it. I have a coworker who he's a big Wheel of Time fan, and he was losing his mind basically over it. And I was like, well, I haven't read the books. And he's like, oh, then you probably liked it. It's like, actually, it was all right, except for the main character is kind of a big plank of wood. But he's I don't know whether it's the way they write him in the script or whatever, but he's just blah. It's very blah. But all the cool characters, to me at least, are the ones that only show up for one or two episodes. That example would be for those who maybe if you haven't watched it yet and you're starting to watch it or whatever, the Gleeman is my favorite character thus far in the show. Now, granted, I haven't read the books, so I've been told in the books he plays a more important role, so we'll see. But just the effects are really good in that show. I will say that. All right, that's enough of me prattling on about nothing important. Let's talk fish. So, have a couple of things rolling around in my head for what I want to do this year. In the sense of maybe things I haven't done content wise, other than I'm in the middle of my dev hunt part 2 in order to get the online horticulture program back on its legs because my dev has just gone so MIA. I haven't heard from her at all, so I have to get a new dev and kind of start over. Thankfully, I have all the groundwork done and know exactly what I want, so it'll go a little faster, but I'm basically starting from scratch again, which really sucks. So, that's the big one. And of course, there's the if my garage ever gets empty, build fish room, right? That's, of course, the big one. But, so, here's a couple things I have in my head. And then I really want feedback from chat. And, if you've got ideas, by all means, throw them at me. I'm curious. But one of the things I kind of have thought about doing, other than, I know some people like it when I rant about products that suck. And doing a few more of those. But I thought more about, if I were to optimize something. So, based on what I think is good and bad about a product, how I would, if I were in the engineering side of things, if I were in the product development side of things, I've actually worked in product development in the past, how I would make it, quote, better, right? Because that's all in the eye of the beholder. But better as far as I'm concerned. And And I'll give you a super short example, right? Because I don't think there's a lot of room for improvement in, say, like a sponge filter. If we were to take the aquarium co-op sponge filter, right? I like the housing unit and some of the changes they made there to make it better than like the El Cheapos that you get. The green is nice because it does kind of blend in. But my only improvement would be to have a less coarse option. So you would have like the coarse, which is, I think theirs is 20 ppi if I remember right. It's fairly coarse. And then I would have one that's like 30. You know, a little bit more fine. I don't need ultra fine. I don't need like the Swiss Tropicals super fine, you know, block filters that they do. And I've used those and I like them in some regards. I think they're way overpriced, but that's the special Pore foam or whatever whatever they're marketing there. There's other foams like that aren't as expensive, but you know, they're doing what they're doing. That would be like the tiniest optimization because there's not a lot of room there, right? But like things like hang-on back filters or canister filters, things like that actually have quite a lot of room, right, to do improvements. So there's that. Then there's people who like have no interest in having a slightly finer sponge whatsoever. They just want it to basically never have to be serviced if they don't have to, and always be flowing. You know, you get that's like the Corey mentality of like you don't have to service it as often. It's just always doing its thing, which is why he likes them that coarse. But yeah. So that was one like little thing I thought about doing. I don't know how. The thing is, like, I don't know how interesting that would be to people, right? Because you're talking about, I guess, less fish-oriented. You know, there's things like that, random stuff like that. Rogue aquariums. How about setting up a clownfish tank? I'm not setting up any salt water, Darren. I'm struggling enough as is right now when it comes to making things function the way they should be, in the sense of I should be breeding some of my rainbow fish and I'm not, and a lot of that just comes down to I don't have the time to raise the babies right now, especially that first month because it's really rough. So, you know, going to a completely different genre, just like doing brackish, for example, right? Like brackish is slightly less work, but it's still a way different iteration of work than freshwater. So like, I can't abuse I can't abuse saltwater the way I can freshwater as easily, unless I like really just did like nothing but macroalgae in tanks as like the faux planted tank, right? But then I wouldn't be doing clowns, because like clowns, I want them in anemones, and I love that behavior. I observe it from afar and enjoy it. I've got people talking about ways to optimize stuff in chat. All right, apparently some optimization things are interesting, at least at some point. So Leo's mentioning, like, speaking of mat and filter, how long till bacteria is really established that will just keep it stable? You know, it really depends. If you're using some kind of bacterial kickstart, it's a little bit faster. If you're really just trying to do it slow and easy and natural, a month. Seriously, it's taking your time and being patient is way better than, like, what's the fastest I can do it? Patience is a virtue. Just anything when you're doing a new tank, slow and steady will always win the race. And then, yeah, and the other side of that, the other Tiffany's mentioning this is kind of like, I could do stuff about how you can optimize current existing things, right? That's, you know, hot rodding filters and stuff like that. And that's another thing that could be talked about, is like trying to get into, what products you could use to better optimize existing things that are out there. I would love to have the time to like go through and like fix a a CChem title and make it like the true greatest hang on back ever, which basically all that is would be like 3D printing the housing that sits around the pump so that it doesn't have that skimmer, so that you never have that stupid sucking noise issue. You can do some stuff to kind of mess with that, but like literally building a blocker that goes in there so you never have to worry about it. That I think that thing alone would almost make that filter perfect, or at least very, very close. So one of the other things I thought in my psychotic brain was trying to get some more like kind of fish room restore tours. I haven't done that in a while. A lot of that has to do with human malware is a jerk, especially with the pick your latest variant, right? But like you've got trying to think of a clever name for the cron, but we'll just call it the cron, right? That thing spreads like crazy, so it's very risky. Like I was supposed to do a tour of my friend Nick over at Shrimpy Business's place, basically a year ago, and there's just a lot of this is out of respect in his household and his family and stuff like that. It's just with the pandemic as it is. We talked about it for a while. I was like, I'm still kind of not comfortable for it yet. Still not comfortable for it yet. It's like, yeah, no problem. All right, and just here's where we are right now, right? We're waiting for the next paranoia-inducing thing where the media just screams at us and tries to scare the ever-living hell out of you. Jay, friends, you could just always set up a tank the way that Dr. Novak suggests. That requires setting up a new tank. I've been tearing down tanks. Have you noticed that? Just wait. When the fish room tour comes, you're going to see I've torn down more tanks. I have less tanks now than I had a year ago. And I have less tanks now than I had 6 months ago. And part of that comes down to I need... If I have more tanks than I'm putting up, they need to be for really specific things, and those specific things take up a lot of room. And I don't have a lot of room, and or they take up a lot of power. That's actually the biggest problem I have in my house. So I was talking with my dad about this, actually, because my dad does a lot of electrical work and stuff like that. Like, he's old school. He can do pretty much everything. And he did a bunch of rewiring work at his own house in his garage. And he was talking to me. He was like, oh, yeah, I know you got the new electric car. Do you have a charger at home? And it's like, well, no, not yet. I need to get some of the stuff out of the garage so I can easily access the breaker box, because I'd rather build, the right paneling, because there's some specific requirements with charging off of those and the type of charge they need and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, well, whenever you get to that, just let me know. I'll help you. I can do the wiring for you. And that way you don't have to spend, hundreds of dollars hiring an electrician. I can just take care of it, which is nice, right? Save a few $100, have my dad come out and help, spend some time with my dad, things like that. And then we got into this larger discussion about when I do the garage, because he knows that like my plan is to put all the fish in the garage eventually. And how, like, my plan was to put in a sub panel and do some stuff. And so we started going back and forth this conversation about doing electrical in my garage, basically. And I tried to explain, like, how my house is wired to him. Because I've explained this before, but, like, an example would be the wall that's right over here is on the same breaker. There's one outlet on this wall. Is on the same breaker as both of my upstairs bathrooms. Right, so I have an actual bathroom, and then I have like a little partial bathroom that's like the master bedroom bathroom, right? And it's basically just like a shower stall and a toilet, but it's very simple. But they're all on like the same breaker for power, and then all the bedrooms in the upstairs are on a different breaker, and then downstairs, where a majority of my big tanks are, which is 2 different large rooms, are all on the same breaker, because this is just how they wired houses in the 80s. They're doing it fast and loose, kind of, So what's really the problem that I run into is that the amount of power you need when you're not heating a room, which in some of these rooms where I have space for tanks, I can't heat the entire room. right? Because it's partially a living environment, and I don't want those environments to be 80 degrees. So you get this thing where, yeah, I need to heat tanks individually. You need to use heaters. You got equipment, and I run into the problem where I'm pushing the breakers in my circuit breaker box to their limit, to where if I add more power, I'll overload them and they'll pop, right? So that's the biggest problem I tend to run into when it comes to extra tanks. Is I do rainbow fish, so I like bigger tanks, right? With bigger tanks, while that can work and be awesome, you need more power because you got more lighting, more heat, bigger filtration, which takes more power, all those kind of things, right? And then you have all this stuff where more, it all stacks up, and all of a sudden, breaker says, no, sir, we ain't doing it. Like my room that has the Guppy Mansion in it, it's basically, if I were to set up one more tank in that room than what I have had in the past, I would overload the breaker and blow it. And that's after removing heaters from a bunch of tanks in order to heat the room, and only heating certain tanks that need to be slightly hotter. Because that's just how my house is wired. So until I can get stuff in the garage, the likelihood of me ever setting up a new tank is excessively low. Brother-in-law James's tank is the newest tank in the house, and that will probably stay the only new tank in the house for a good while. And a lot of it is just that I need to be conscious of what I can do with my time, right? And more importantly, what I can do with my power requirements inside my house right now. Until I can rewire a bunch of stuff. But that takes time and money, right? It sucks. A solution, cool water fish. I mean, yeah, I guess you could do a shrimp tank with just an air pump. But we know my record with shrimp. It's not good. It's not good. Tom H, welcome to Auto Singles, buddy. Welcome back. It says new member. I swear you were a member before, Tom. And then James N, thanks for the £2 thumbs up, man. I appreciate it. So that's some of the stuff I'm looking at. And there's other stuff I've of course got some product testing stuff I'm going to do throughout the year. We'll do some more plant oriented stuff. I have a talk scheduled in March at the Greater Portland Aquarium Society, but it's basically the same one I gave to my club. So I don't think I'm going to record that and put it on YouTube unless you guys really want me to. That's a thing that I guess I leave to you guys, because it's basically the same talk. It'll have some small edits basically that are specific to the Portland club and how they operate, but other than that, it's effectively the same thing. So I don't think there's a necessity to record that one. But I'll be talking at Fishtoberfest in October. Later, so very late this year. And that will be probably a completely new talk, because it's a shorter amount of time specifically for their requirements. And I have no clue what I'm going to talk about yet, but that one I'll make sure it gets recorded and goes up on the interwebs when it happens. But other than that, yeah, I've kind of opened. My thought was doing some stuff, or really we could have some real fun and try to find some neat stuff to tour. So there's one thing that I've been trying to do. You know what? There's actually one other thing I want to talk about. One other thing I've been thinking about doing is a video with potentially both, but either of my parents. They wouldn't be at the same time, right? It'd be one with my dad and one with my mom. And talking about fish when I was a kid and my memories versus what they know to be reality. I talked a little bit about this with my mom, because she was kind of on board of doing a video with me. And we were talking about some of the things that I remember as a kid, versus what she knows actually happened. So it's things that say something went wrong with a particular fish tank, and what I was told probably to make me feel better as a kid, as opposed to what actually happened, which my mom knows that kind of stuff, or my dad. So, if you guys are interested in that, let me know, because I thought it would be fun just to see, like, talk about those kind of things and share some stories, because also my mom, right, she grew up with my great grandmother, who was the one that bred angels, like, way back. We're talking 50s and 60s, and kind of her memories of what it was like being around those fish tanks way back then. And you know, we were talking a little bit about that kind of stuff. The interesting stuff, you know. To me at least, I think it's interesting. I don't know. That would be interesting for you folks to tell me if you are even interested. I suppose I can just put it out and just watch my views either do well or do terrible, right? And that will tell me whether it's interesting to you guys. But stuff I've thought about. The futile attempt at breaking the rainbow addiction. That would be a pretty good talk title. Oh, that's a great idea, New Local Austin, for like Father's Day or Mother's Day. That's a great idea. So my dad was super into koi. That was his thing. And I've never sat and asked him why koi as an adult. It's just never come to me, because I just knew he liked koi, so I'd never asked why. So that's kind of one of the things I thought about, is talking koi with him and the things that he remembers versus what I remember as a kid. You know, it's like little stuff like that I thought would be interesting and fun. There was a question early on I want to make sure I get to. So, Brandon, if you're still here, I hope you are. Just started an immersed setup as your 2022 project. Would love to see the advice you give if you did the same. So, I would actually not do immersed setups, and part of that is because I like the challenge of growing everything submerged. It's much easier to grow things immersed. Now, if I were to grow them immersed, I would be doing it the way that Northwest Aqua Hobby does it. So that's Will. He has kind of a ever-growing plant farm at his own home that he's working on. That's his personal business. He actually quit his job to do that and YouTube. And mostly it's to do the farm, but he has YouTube documenting it. Actually, let me link his channel, just because his channel is super interesting. If you're really into immersed growing plants, he's doing a lot of teaching. I think it's either Northwest. Yeah, it's just Northwest Aqua Hobby. Just making sure it wasn't Pacific Northwest Aqua Hobby. This is Will's channel, Northwest Aqua Hobby. He's a super cool dude. He's really nice. He lives out near Jason at Redfish Bluefish's shop. And at some point I'll go tour his place and we'll talk with him. But he does a lot of stuff about how to grow stuff immersed. I would literally do exactly what he's doing. Which is to say, he's doing it for... so the real question comes, are you trying to do your immersed setup for growing in mass, or are you trying to do it for some kind of display? Because if you're trying to do like a neat display, kind of paludarium style almost, that's a little different than if you're trying to just grow as many plants as possible. Lurking while in class. Oh, man. But no, seriously, just look up Northwest Aqua Hobby when you get home. And if not, go back to the replay. You know, find the link in chat. But he has tons of stuff about how he does stuff and his process. I would start there. That'd be the first area I would start, because it's very, very good information, and he's really knows what he's doing. All right. There's another question I saw. Oh, no, comment is probably more accurate. So the other Tiffany, going back to kind of the concept of like hot rodding things, stuff like that, is not just how to hot rod, but why it works. So getting the kind of the understanding behind the mechanics, or what you're trying to do, and some of the facts behind it, what makes those, whether they're DIY or whatever, adjustments to a product work. Totally. I can totally understand that. And there's a few places where I think that's necessary. I think the biggest problem, of course, is that most of the like hot rodding a filter have already been done by either Corey at Aquarium Co-op or Pond Guru, right? They both do a lot of that kind of stuff about how to like upgrade filters by changing out media and adding extra sponge and doing this and doing that. I think about the only one that's more interesting how to hot rod something was how PecTech did a bunch of things to the Fluval Flex that I thought were really interesting way back. And that was something I followed for a little bit, and then eventually was just like, this isn't necessary for what I'm doing anymore, because I changed like the fish and stuff in the tank when I was no longer keeping guppies, and it didn't matter as much. But yeah. All right. MSC Aquatics. Any tips on growing scarlet temple plants? Yeah, I've actually got a few. So, I just saw Carrie Pitt's comment, and I guarantee I know the person you're talking about. But I want to answer MSC Aquatics question real fast, and then I'll talk about that, because I think if it's the channel I'm thinking, he's a very interesting channel, and I watch his channel too. So the first thing with Scarlet Temple that I would do is a small amount of CO2 or just stronger light goes a long way with that plant. Scarlet Temple really does very well. So Alternanthera reinekii, any of its variations, really does well from a tiny boost of CO2, and not liquid carbon, actual CO2. Now, if you're trying to do specifically a no CO2 setup, then getting a little bit more light, or at least putting it where it's not being shaded at all, helps, because it is a slightly more light-hungry plant. And then finally, if you really want to propagate it more, what you do is, like, let's say that this is your stem, right, of the Alternanthera, or Scarlet Temple, and at the very top there's a little tip, just boop, nip the tip. Right, just give it a little chop, bar mitzvah style. What that does is that triggers the plant knowing I can't grow any taller, and it causes it to grow a lot of side shoots, and it'll bush it out a lot more, and then you can pull those side shoots off and repropagate them to gain your density. Scarlet Temple is one of those plants that's really good about growing side shoots when it comes to getting your child plants, as opposed to, like, you trim it and then you get a bunch of little babies coming off of that trim. So if you want to control the height of your Scarlet Temple and make it more bushy and dense, nip the top of it once it gets to a height that you like, because otherwise they'll just kind of keep growing, right? They do get fairly tall, but if you nip the top of that thing at, say, if your tank is this tall and you only want it to be this tall, if you nip it right here, it'll start bushing out a lot more. That's a trick that's kind of exclusive to Alternanthera. And works best with Alternanthera because of the way that particular plant grows. So that's kind of a neat trick with Scarlet Temple. The other thing just to keep in mind is that if you're not doing CO2, you're not going to get that strong red color on top. It's going to be kind of a yellowy green, but you're going to get a nice pinkish red on the underside of the plant, which is fine because you're going to see it and it looks great. But if you want that super strong red coloration on top, especially if you have like the Roseafolia or any of the variegated versions where you can see the veins really distinct on the top of the leaf, almost always requires a little bit of CO2 and good light to get that effect. So we're talking like a Fluval Plant 3.0 on a 40 breeder or stronger, and pushing the light fairly high. You're not gonna pull that off with like an Aqua Sky or something that's more of that like low to mid light. You need strong lighting to really get that coloration to show up if you want that really rich red tone out of Scarlet Temple. You can still keep it very healthy without those kind of things, but just if your goal is I want that super red coloration, that's what you're looking at. Uh-oh. All sorts of interesting questions. Nina, I thought about growing as many types of algae as I can in 2022. So far, I'm succeeding. I have all sorts of random algae all over the place, and just most of them are in like a controlled amount, which is nice. Dustin Perez, just hatched my first batch of bristlenose fry. They still have the yolk sac. I was wondering when to start feeding food. Just before that yolk sac is gone. So they'll start grazing on stuff like biofilms and very small foods. And if you give them like beans or zucchini or things like that, they'll start trying to graze on that stuff before they've completely consumed that yolk sac. And that's a good thing. You really don't want to force them to go a day or two with nothing after they've completed the yolk sac. You want them to kind of have just a tiny amount of yolk sac left and have something to graze on. It's much better for their health overall. That being said, if the yolk sac isn't super obvious, which most of the time it only lasts for like a day or two, right? It depends on the species. I know when I was getting more reliable batches for a little while of my wob and mooster babies, and granted, I wasn't doing what I needed to like optimize their survivability rate. Their yolk sac only lasted like a day and a half. It was really fast, so I had to have excess food, and the way that I tend to do it was I would use Bacter AE with a really big piece of driftwood in there, so that there was kind of always something to graze off the driftwood for the little babies. The adults kind of left it alone and just waited for me to put in like green beans or zucchini or whatever else I was going to feed them. But for the babies, that worked decently for me. But little zucchini goes a long way. Little blanched zucchini, just so it's nice and soft. Or like rapashi is another great example of a food that just goes a long way with babies. Babies have no shame. They'll get there. They'll get that food. Okay, so back to Carrie's comment. So there's a guy who has his own channel and builds all his filtration to run on air power. He has power issues, so he has to do something. I'm assuming, do you mean, is that Fishman, right? The guy who builds everything out of his own acrylic and he runs his own, like, fish-oriented business, too. I think he does a bunch of, like, maintenance and stuff like that. If that's who you're referencing, Carrie, I know who you're talking about. And I don't have the fabrication shop to build all the cool acrylic stuff that he does. And like one of the biggest things that would go a long way is if I took the time and like set up a linear air piston and ran everything off air and stuff like that. But when I'm running like one or two big tanks in a room and then, a mixture of tanks in another room and stuff like that, it's hard to like run air just through my whole house to do that correctly. So I end up with things like canister filters on certain tanks and air powered stuff on other tanks, and it's like total hodgepodge because it's not planned. It was done at random, and that's really what it comes down to. Whereas when I get my garage emptied, whenever that occurs, and can actually like build that thing out, that's fully planned, all that kind of stuff. So it's like I'll be literally in there where it's just bare concrete and I don't even have the walls done, putting down painter's tape, literally mapping out all my space so that I know what I can do where, and then from there start mapping out, okay, I have this many tanks, that means this many lights, that means this much this, that means this much power, and then from there it's like literally sitting down with an electrician, or I have friends who are electricians, which helps too, and figuring out, okay, I'm going to build a sub panel. What all do I need in that sub panel to do it right, to make it redundant, to make it completely safe, protected, GFCI switches, all that kind of stuff, and going the full 9 on this. I have a reasonable chunk of money that I've saved over time in my like rat hole funds to like do my fish room. But it's certainly not like, I'm not talking like I got 50 G's. No, it's not quite that nice, but I can make my fish room what I want it to be. I just need to have the space. That's really what it comes down to. And there's some stuff I'm doing currently to investigate how to accelerate that process, but you can only have so many irons in the hopper, if you will. TJ the Fish Dad, are you talking about Fishman's YouTube channel? If you're talking about that, I would gladly link it. He's got a fantastic channel. He does a ton of cool stuff. Boop 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 doop. That is Fishman's channel. I'll happily link it. Yeah, he builds all sorts of cool acrylic stuff. He has a lot of like really neat tanks, lots of planted tanks. Very, very, very interesting to see a lot of the stuff he does, because he does kind of tutorials on this stuff too, which is I think the interesting part about his channel. Oogie doogie. So Farron, you're talking about your 32 flex, it looks like a couple different things. So you like a 32 BioCube going to a 45 rimless, 28. You got a bunch of tanks. All right. Make friends with a plumber. You'll need a sink in that garage. Oh yeah. Well, technically I do know a plumber. I know a couple. One of my uncles used to be a plumber, and then Joel, aka Corvus Oskin, right? He's kind of the guy. He's doing a lot of the stuff over at the Co-op's new store. He did stuff at Corey's urban fish farm. I think that's what he calls it, right? his basically his new fish building at his new house. He and I talked a while back when I was originally putting together some of my plans, and he had some suggestions, and I'll most likely have him be my contractor, and he knows how to plumb stuff, and he would do a lot of that stuff for me too. So yeah, I mean, there's some interesting stuff between him and, like, I know I can connive Master Breeder Dean into helping me out a little bit. Not necessarily doing the work, but helping me in the planning process. Because we've already sat down and talked a couple times about some of the questions that I had if he were to do a more modern fish room. And you've actually seen that kind of stuff now, because it was before Corey built his new thing. So I've watched some of that stuff go into place at Corey's new gigantimous fish farm thing. And so I know it functions, right? I know why it's in place, and we had the philosophical discussion about that way back. Like 2.5 years ago now. Because it was like, I think it was like August of 2019. So a while ago. And I was asking him some questions to start prepping, because I was basically in my research mode. And yeah, plumber and electrician, two very important things if you're building a fish room, if you don't know how to do that stuff yourself, and do it right, that is. But yeah, Joel is like a total jack of all like construction contractor trades, and he can do a ton of stuff. Like, oh, good question, Mr. Littles. I like it. What are you looking forward to the most at the ANGFA North America convention, aka the Aquatic Triple Crown? I like how you refer to it as the ANGFA NA convention, and I guess also the Triple Crown. The biggest thing I'm looking forward to is just hanging out with people. I get an opportunity to go. I'm very fortunate that I have a very good friend of mine who lives out in that area, so I don't have to stay at a hotel. I can stay at his place, so I get to save some money that way, which basically means I get to, like, have a little bit more fun with what I'm doing while I'm out on that trip. So I'm probably going to build, like, the first bit of channel merch that will just be given away out at that, while I'm out at that event. Just because I feel like it. I come from the radio world where you don't necessarily, when you go to a live event, you don't sell your merch, you give it away. Or it's for those who know the more industry term, tchotchkes, right? You give those things away. Whereas a lot of people will you want to buy my hat or buy my shirt. I'm not here to sell merch. My channel's way too small to ever care about that stuff. Every time I see a small channel selling merch, I just shake my head. And I respect people that do it. Don't get me wrong. I understand why small channels sell merch. I'll give you an example. And I'm not trying to rain on the parade of this particular YouTuber. But there's a YouTuber who recently had a really big spike. Had a small channel, had a big spike in his subscribers because of a video that was not on his channel. And the first live stream I went into to him, because I'd watched some of his replays and stuff, and I find him generally interesting, and I watch a little bit of stuff here and there. Every couple of months I basically check in on his channel and see what's up. And for 15 minutes straight he was just hawking merch. And the only thing I could think was, dude, you have 15,000 subscribers. Do you really think it's worth wasting all this time trying to hawk merch to sell like 1 or 2 t-shirts when you could put all that effort into just making better video content. Like, I would rather take the time, and I spent a lot of time working on the online horticulture program, and only to have like my dev just go MIA, which kills me, right? Because I now have to reinvest that time again. But it's worth it. I would rather do that because that is something that's good for the hobby. And in the end, it creates important stuff that ties to my channel, right? It's about my fundamental want to educate and help people, right? That's just who I am. That's how I enjoy this hobby. It's the rising tide, right? The rising tide raises all ships. I have that mentality of life. I want to be the rising tide. I want to make everybody better, not just myself. Everybody. I do that at work. I do that for fun. I'm a horrible optimist. I always try to find the best in everything. Even in my worst days, I look for the silver lining like crazy. And to me, I look at like small channels. I get why small channels have merch. It's to get a little extra money. It's really hard to make money as a small YouTuber. Totally get that. But could you do better by just investing the time it took to figure out your merch or get your art or whatever the heck it is and put that into making more and or better videos? Or better live streams? Whatever it may be, whatever your jam is. You know, there's some people who like prefer live streams. Okay. Is there the time you wasted on that? Could you instead find something that makes your live streams more appealing to more people? Or could you add a little extra live stream somewhere? Maybe that would be better overall, long term, than a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. Like, this is what I used to work in marketing, so like my brain is so wired so weird compared to a lot of other people that do this stuff where it's like, oh yeah, well that's what YouTubers do. And for me, I'm like, oh my, Paul just instantly rats out Rico Stan. I love Rico, man. He's such a hoot. Yeah, I do know he's got leggings with his face on it. I'm talking about somebody else because like I don't feel like there are plenty of YouTubers, small YouTubers that have merch, but they don't like constantly push it. But like I literally watched 15 minutes of a live stream of this particular fish tuber, and he was just hawking merch the whole time. And I was just like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I finally gave up after 15 minutes of just like hawking merch. It's like, okay, well, I'll check in like 2 more months and maybe you'll be back to like doing good content again. Oh man. All right. Let me get back to the question in the chat and not be on my like rants here. Sean, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. But yeah. Triple Crown, mostly looking forward to seeing people. I know I'm going to loop back to that. Farron's Electrician, ooh, in the Denver area. You know, it's funny. Colorado is like one of the places, if I was ever to leave the Northwest, Colorado is one of the places I would actually move to. And probably the Denver area, but yeah, it's just interesting things. Oh man. Okay, Leo, highest temp for Zebra Autos. How many for a 40 community tank? Well, okay, I mean, keep in mind, you can do a reasonable amount. Now, Zebra Autos are a little bit larger than a standard auto sinkless, and it depends on how you plan to feed them. If your goal is to have them just subsist purely off of like biofilm and all the extras that like little surface algae and stuff like that, I wouldn't have too many. Now, if you're going to actively feed them, doing things like adding in zucchini and stuff like that, and you don't have bristlenose plecos, that's the big thing, because bristlenoses will get to that way more aggressively, then you can have quite a lot more. Which, by the way, if you don't know, zucchini is a fantastic food for basically any algae eater. You know, auto sinkless, all that kind of stuff. They just love those things. But And I would highly encourage zucchini, or you can also do like the small yellow squashes. A lot of the squashes in general just are great, but green is good. Green is very good for your autosyncluses. And if that's the case, if you plan to supplement their nutrition with some other things like blanched zucchini and things like that, like then you can keep quite a lot more. You could keep 12, 15 of them if you want to buy that many. Temperature wise, I've had mine in the past at around 80. And, I honestly think that was too hot. I think they do a little bit better in slightly cooler temperatures, closer to that like 76 range. They're still going to want tropical temps. And if I were to look them up, I bet like I'll get some like ridiculous range that's suggested online. There we go. Seriously Fishy. What does Seriously Fishy have to say? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, why are you in... Oh, no. No. Okay. So they want 21 to 25 C. So, I mean, yeah. I would stay closer to like 72 to 74. Honestly. I keep a lot of mine right now, my regular autos, at about 76 is my average temp. But I would say if you get there somewhere in that like 72, 74 range, pretty good. Because, 25, 21 to 25 C is what's suggested, which 25 is like 77, 78, 77. I remember, I do some things in Celsius at work, and I don't have to convert back to Fahrenheit that often, but I just know like it's not that hot. It's like it's not too hot. So keep that in mind, right? 25C is kind of like the suggested hot range, and that's like 75, 78 degrees. And I know I ran mine at 80 for a while, and they did okay for a little bit, but then I started losing some when it got hotter. So I would look at like, 72, 74 should be fine. You keep your zebra loaches at 74, have them in my community tank. Oh, zebra loach or zebra auto? Zebra loach is a little different than a zebra auto. I originally saw zebra auto, and I got a little excited there because I love that fish, and I like the cool autos. All the cool autos are neat, but then I keep all the common autos because I just love those little buggers. I like auto singles in general. I should probably just try to keep a bunch of auto singles. That should maybe be my next like great adventure, is like all sorts of random auto singlet species. Okay, autos. Yeah, no. And yes, zebra autos do fine. Any of the autos do great in community tanks because they're super peaceful fish. And most fish leave them alone. Just keep in mind that if you want to have more of them, or if you're trying to breed them, it helps to not have a lot of stuff out there to mess with them. Just to make sure that tank is really well established before you add autosynclus. You want to have a good supply of like biofilm and stuff like that, but if you supplement their diet with things like zucchini, that's going to be even better. Ooh, peppermint autos, Nirvana Aquatics. I'm super jealous of those because those, I have never seen those in person yet. I've seen the orange or the bumblebee. I've seen zebras. I've seen black autos. I've seen, of course, common autos. A couple different versions of the giant auto that were all wild caught in Peru. I've never seen the peppermints in person, so I'm a little jelly of those. A little jelly. Zebra autos are super cool though. They're a little bit bigger, right? So your normal autos like that big. Zebras get like this big. And I know you're like, Bentley, that doesn't look like that much. Just trust me, when it's in person, that like extra half an inch to an inch on a fish, especially the females, because the females get kind of fat, right? If you got them fat and happy, they're big and you can really see them, but they do hide a lot. They hide a lot. So just be prepared. They're even more shy than the standard auto. But if you get them really comfortable and they're coming out a lot, then you're doing it perfect. But yeah. Yeah. That'd be my suggestion. For the zebra auto specifically. Now, normal autos can go quite a lot hotter. Like Paul's talking about, you got them with discus tanks at 84 Fahrenheit and stuff like that. Michael Milieri, is it wrong to breed and sell Bosemani rainbows if you don't know the collection point? Don't want to add to the problem of interbreeding. Is it wrong? No, not necessarily. A lot like people who will get Bosemani that are, I got the red Bosemani rainbow, which almost always is an Atinjo. It's very unlikely that you have any of like the really crazy collection points. There's certain common strains that are out there, and some of them have some muddled genetics, but most of them don't. It's perfectly okay to sell them. The biggest thing is like you're gonna have, you'll have like the rainbow ultra nerds, the people who are even farther down the chain of crazy than me, who would probably, those would be the people who would say no. For me, I would say it's okay, but what your goal would be like raise some of them, sell some of them. That's fine. It's just a good like generic. Here's a Bosemani rainbow to get at a store or whatever. But use those as an opportunity to get yourself more accustomed to raising baby rainbow fish. And then that way, if you decide to get to one of those rarer rainbows or a specific collection point rainbow, now you've got the skill set to raise those fish up, what you need to do, what some of the problems are, and make sure that you keep them separate at that point. So if you do get a set of Bosemani where you know the collection point, make sure that you don't mix those together with the ones where you don't know the collection point. Right? That way you can go, okay, no matter what, I know all of these are Atinjo, or all of these are Aves Creek, or all of these are Ayumaru, and then these are the ones where, they're Bosemani, I don't know where they're from. Right? That's perfectly okay. Just don't go to the point of where you're going to mix them and be like, well, I know that these are darker orange, because what's going to happen is you're going to lose it in the females. And then you're screwed. There is... Maybe if you had Ayumarus and Ooters, could you tell the difference? You'll lose it in the females, almost guaranteed. So just, if you get a different one where you know the collection point of other Bosemani later, just make sure that those stay separate from the ones that you have currently. But I wouldn't say it's wrong. As long as you've got the group together from the same source, they're probably all the exact same type. Just you don't know the collection point off the top. But almost guaranteed, it's either an Atinjo or an Ayumaru. Those are really the only two that are common where you don't know the collection point. And it's either a Bosemani rainbow or a red Bosemani rainbow is how they sell them commonly, at least in the U.S. And probably a few other places. Oh, man. Alec the Nice is also an electrician at Chesapeake Bay. Local Union 80. What's up, man? I'm going to say this. I know this is a tangent, but you guys should know this by now. I tangent off everything all the time. My brain can't stay focused. One thing that I find in younger people, so my cousin has kids that are all between, I think it's 9 and 13, right? They're all younger, but they really want to do things like, I want to be a YouTuber or something like that. Which, it's so hard to break into that. And it kills me that people of younger generations, and even people like my younger brother, he's 11 years younger than I am, who seem to look down at professions that, frankly, are hard work, like electricians, plumbers, carpenters, even though all of those trades are in high demand and pay well. I see signs all the time in my area, hiring plumbers, hiring electricians from these big companies because they are struggling to find people. And they post these very high wages, in many cases making more money than I do, and I make good money. I don't make amazing money, but I make good money, right? If I lived probably anywhere else that didn't have such an insane cost of living, I would be considered well off. But because of the cost of living in my area, I'm just like, we're doing all right. It's one of those. But yeah, it's crazy to me that, like, I see a lot of people who typically are my age or older that work in those kind of professions, and, like, it seems like younger people just ignore them entirely. It drives me crazy. Like, I would almost argue that if you were younger in, like, high school or just thinking about going to college, you'd be better off going to a trade school than going to college. Unless you, like, for certain that you're going to do very well in, like, the tech field or medical or something like that. Because of the way the demand is, and you're also harder to replace by things like automation and machine learning and things like that, it amazes me how many people just, like, blow off something like becoming an electrician and being a union electrician. Because, like, there's so much protection for the people that are in the unions. They make good money, they make good livings, and there's perpetually work. Because they're so understaffed. It's one of those things where I look at it and I'm just like, why don't other people drive this conclusion? Like, for me, like, I'm too old to switch that profession, and I've got a good profession as is, right? But if I were back in my 20s before I got into tech, and I was, like, literally aimlessly going, like, I don't know what to do, that'd be one of the first things I'd consider right now. Just because of the various benefits that are there, and also you're very hard to replace. It's like, I don't know, maybe I'm just, like, spitballing, but, like, younger folks, you need to, like, trades are better than, like, an art history degree. They're so much more important. I'll get off my soapbox now. I'm sorry. Oh, Kyle's Aquarimetrics. Oh no. I made the mistake of putting blue dream shrimp with red cherry shrimp, and now I have a tank full of brownish clear shrimp. It happens, but you can get those back out. You can pick the ones that still have color out and split them to tanks and start rebuilding your colonies. It's tough. And yeah, like, I can appreciate an art historian, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, like, whoo boy. Don't be, I want to tell you guys a story. It's really short, but I don't drink coffee. I'm not a big coffee person, right? But my girlfriend loves coffee. And I used to, for a while, go to this little, like, coffee stand that's not far down the road from my house to get her an iced coffee drink, which I won't go into my rant about those, but get her from the same stand, a couple times a week. Okay? And the particular barista who I always saw every morning, she was always super nice, always took really good care of us whenever we went there. She was moving to a different place. And I was sitting there talking to her, and I made it a point to go in on her last day because she always took great care of us. Great customer service, always had a smile. Even on days where I knew she was having a hard day, because, like, you could just tell by her and just be like, hey, you doing all right? And she's like, just a rough morning, but I'll be all right. I'm like, well, keep trucking along. This was shortly after I'd gotten my job at my current place, right? And right in the early stages of the pandemic, where there were a lot of lockdowns in the Seattle area, but still was working a coffee shop. This gal is a single mother, worked at 2 different coffee stands, so she had 2 jobs, and she had like a third job. It was like 1 day a week or whatever, and I can't remember what that was. So this gal's working hard, right? She's working 3 jobs, single mom, got a young son who was like, I think he was 6 at the time. And on her last day working at the stand, before basically she moved farther away than I was ever going to drive for a cup of coffee for my girlfriend, I gave her $100 tip. And she looked at me like I like grown a second head or something like that. And I said, you've always taken great care of me. Please, please, please make sure that your son learns the value of hard work. Because for me, I will tell you this, guys, I do not have a degree. I have a certificate in programming. I don't have an official degree. I don't have an associate's. I don't have a bachelor's. Everything I happen to have lucked out, whatever the hell you want to call it, in my life has come from working my ass off. And while I would generally like to say that I am an intelligent person, you could argue that I potentially wasted my intelligence by not having a degree. And yet, I work in a highly skilled field in a managerial role because of my highly technical skill set and capability. All from hard work. I'm one of those people who believes fully that I can teach anyone anything as long as they are willing to apply themselves and learn. So I care more about a person's personality when it comes to work and their work ethic than what they know. We people can always learn something new. It just takes the right work ethic. If I had any advice for anyone in anything, work ethic, hard work pays off. Don't be lazy. Now, you can do things that allow you to be lazy in certain things. I do that all the time with aquatics. I do a lot of hard work up front. I do a lot of engineering. We'll put it in quotation marks, right? I work as an engineer in order to make it so that I can be a little lazy on the back end because my schedule is a nightmare. Because I work my butt off all the time. But if I gave any advice ever, hard work and patience. That's it. That's my story. That's why I very frequently look at some of my I kind of jokingly call them nephews and nieces because a lot of my cousins we're so close knit. We're more like brothers and sisters than cousins, very often, and I stress constantly. Good work ethic is way more important than a piece of paper that says X. Because you can have that piece of paper that says X, but if you don't have the work ethic to go with it, it doesn't matter. You won't stay in that profession. The cream rises to the top, blah, blah, blah. Take whatever one of those sayings you want, right? All of those are work ethic. The American dream is work ethic. It's out there. It's hard to get nowadays. Good Lord, the system is rigged against us. But you can still do it. That's the important thing. You can still do it. Now that I'm off my soapbox, Brandon, good question. Also, Billy Bass, just wanted, glad you loved the Plans for Profit series. I'm planning on doing a few more of those this year. I got a couple in my head, some extra little tricks of the trade I've learned and some updates that will help people who still want to go down that line, even though I personally am not doing Plants for Profit just because I don't have the time for it anymore. But I still grow lots and lots and lots of plants because I love plants. I love plants and tanks, and I kind of let them do whatever they want very often. But yeah, as an educator, I take personal offense. Tom, you have one of the hardest jobs out there. You have a job that takes a tireless and thankless amount of effort. I was very fortunate to have very good teachers in high school, and while I did go to some college, I had one teacher in college that I could tell had not worked in the profession they were teaching. And I had another who did. And I could tell the difference between the two of them like that. And I learned from the one that had actual background in the profession. And I almost entirely ignored the one that didn't. That's about my only gift. I read people well. I know how to read people and figure out like what's the best way to communicate with them. That's one of my best skills. And you can't teach that out of a book. But you know what you can teach? Almost anything else. That's the beautiful part. I got a buddy who's he's a math teacher. And breaking into as a young math teacher is so hard. It's amazing, but he's great. You know how I know he's great? Because he has no problem working at places like a Sylvan Learning Center or something like that, because it gives him the opportunity to help kids who need the help the most. That's how I know he's a good teacher. Because it's about these things. The mentality of why he does what he does is here. Big thing for me. I look at people like that. I care way more about how they do things than I do about like some tenured college professor. Because a good college professor can make good money. But that guy who works at a tutoring place because he gets to help the kids that need it the most, or like one of my other good friends, he's a educator of special needs kids. That is a tough job, and I know it is. And that guy is the most positive, happy person I have ever met in my life. That is a guy who has an endless wealth of just positive energy. And every time he gets to do anything with the kids that he teaches, you can tell that positivity makes their day better. You just know. You don't even have to be there. You just know it does that. I respect the hell out of people that do that kind of stuff. I've had a lot of great teachers in my life. Some that were like grizzled old veterans that just like sounded like they've been through the worst things in life. And others who like I had a math teacher. I know this is big story time and I've got some stuff I want to get to, but we'll go a little late. Why not? My math teacher for trigonometry when I was in high school, right? I was a very good math student when I was young. Could not remember the entirety of the 70s. I'll basically never forget this. Mr. Conley, this will be probably forever my favorite teacher I've ever had. And this is how you know a teacher knows how to get real with his students. Because his first day, he introduces himself, talks about how he doesn't remember the 70s because he was on cocaine. And, you know, you get the idiots in class. Because, you know, you're talking to like 16 and 17-year-old kids and some 18-year-old kids. And they're all just like, yeah, Mr. Conley partied. And he's like, yeah, I don't remember any of it, including the first 6 years of my daughter's life. And immediately you go, oh, shh. And then from there on out, that guy, sage wisdom. Because somebody who can be that real with you day one and works teaching math to high school students, you know that they have a life experience that almost no one else can understand. So there's sage wisdom that is going to come from that guy. Because he does things out of what he enjoys, knowing some of the things he knows. Dude was the best. Some of the best advice about how to treat people I ever got came from that man. Also, some of the funniest and totally not appropriate for any public thing stories I ever heard came from that man. It was fantastic. Oh man, these are things that impact your life, right? You get people like that where it's just like they're stuck with you forever. Doesn't matter, never goes away. All right, now let me get back to what I was trying to do. Oh Lord, this is how you know like I've had a heck of a day and my brain's scattered all over the place. Duckweed would be a dope plant for profit if only it was a high turnover product. Oh man, no. Duckweed. Oh, duckweed's the devil. Duckweed's the devil. It has a use though. It has a really good use. That's in a sump. Let's see here. There was a question I was trying to get to, and my bag went right, my brain rather went right out the window. Wow. How did I get myself this lost, chat? How did I do it? Oh well, it's toward the end of the stream, right? Just I'm out the window. Oh, that's right. Here we go. Found the comment I was looking at. So MSC Aquatics, my welding instructor was an old school pipeline boilermaker for 40 years. He made sure that we knew how to do things correctly, efficiently, and adjust on the fly if needed. All hands on. I see there's that difference, but you learn from the people who've like have done that work so much better than the people who just like learn and then go teach. I'll never dog teachers. I want to be really clear. I just think that we don't teach kids the things we need to teach them anymore. Like, I don't know about you, but when I was in high school, they did not teach me how to balance a checkbook, which who knows what a checkbook is nowadays, right? But like how to budget things, understand what credit is. These are all life skills. Like how do you ever save money to do a down payment on a home, or how does a car loan actually work? How does financing work? Never teach any of these things. I can tell you like the silly story of how politics occur that cause certain wars, but on my high school education I couldn't have ever told you how to balance a checkbook. I had to learn those things from my parents or on my own. And the fact that we don't teach that kind of stuff drives me crazy. Basic life skills. Like I don't know how many places still do it, but like we had home ec when I was a kid. And I took home ec on purpose because I wanted to learn some really simple stuff like how to do very basic sewing to fix some certain things. Understand basic cooking, stuff like that, right? Just so you have those skills so that you could use them. Crazy thought. I don't know how much of that's still around anymore. I swear a lot of it's gone. Like, and even like music in school has been slowly killed off and stuff like that. It's just because we don't finance schools enough in our freaking kills me. Or basic car care. That's another one. Bob Purcell mentioned that. Basic car care. Understanding how to take care of your vehicle. If you have a vehicle. And you could say the same thing about like, basic maintenance of stuff in a home. Like, how many people understand how to, if something goes wrong with their toilet in their home, how to fix it? Right? How many young kids nowadays know how to fix a problem in their toilet or figure out what the problem in their toilet is, or a sink? Like, I'm not a plumber. I'm not going to be that person who, like, is going to go through and fix a problem in a sink. But I can generally figure out, oh, it's probably something wrong in my P-trap. Who knows what a P-trap is nowadays? It's just, Granddaughter is taking home ec. Still have it. Good. I swear, I think they killed it off where I'm at, which kills me. It's like, there's so many, like, little life skills that we should be teaching people when they're younger to understand these things that you actually need. It's like really high level math. I don't use it at all. I don't use it at all anymore. But yeah, everything is kind of YouTubeable, isn't it? That's a great point, Brandon. Lisa's tanked. I read your comment. I won't put it out loud because there's a million political opinions about that. But yeah, some of those things I think just aren't necessary for school. Like, I don't know. Reading books is good, but I don't know. It should almost not matter who the author is, unless it's like, I mean, certainly we don't want to have some real crazy nonsensical stuff. Like, you're not handing Mein Kampf to kids. Washington is the poster child of awful education changes. I'm not surprised. We used to have like a lot of schools out here that were really, really highly ranked, and now it's all gone to hell. Oh, okay. I'm gonna get off this because we're way over, and I'm going down a well that's so non-fish related that I want to get back on my track. So with that being said, for those who are in the replay crew, if you made it this far, comment down below what kind of stuff would you like to see out of me in 2022. As far as videos are concerned, guys who've been here in the chat, thank you so much. Listening to my rants, watching my brain go all over the place, all those kind of things. Jacob Hill has a question. We're going to make that the last question. Just set up my first aquascape. It has CO2 and my crypts melted after 1 day. Is that normal and will they come back? Very commonly, when we put fresh crypts in a brand new tank, they get really angry and they melt. As long as that root structure and that crown, so the rosette, where the leaves are coming out of, are still in good shape, yes, you should be able to get new leaves. Make sure that there's nutrition at the roots. So as long as they're in some fresh aqua soil, they're going to be fine. Or if you got a root tab, there's the word, root tab underneath them, just be patient and give them a little time. Very frequently when we change the parameters they come out of, or if they were like fresh from the farm and they go into a fully submerged, we're going to see some level of melt in a lot of our crypts. And this could be like the temperature change is different. The water hardness or whatever it is different. They'll melt. That's very common. But then they grow in new adjusted leaves, and those are adjusted for your tank, and they do just fine. Very, very common. Happens very frequently. Don't panic. Just give them time and be patient. They should grow back in slowly but surely. All right. With that being said, that's our last on-topic question. Back to fish and plants, right? Only took Bentley like 20 minutes. Guys, thank you so much for watching this crazy train. As always, stay awesome. And I'll see you next week. Y'all take care. Welcome to 2020 as well. 2022. Version 2.0. Oh, man.